All right, so now let's go over section C. So in section C, we're looking at roots or x-intercepts of quadratic functions, or you can think of them as zeros as well. So essentially what we're looking for is what value of x makes the entire function 0. So you can either find those by factoring the quadratic, so using those factoring skills, or the quadratic formula. So let's just remind ourselves what that is. So quadratic formula states that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac and all of that over 2a. What are these a, b, and c's? So the a, b, and c's are just referring to if you had written the quadratic in standard form. So standard form just means ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So you have your a, your b, and your c. All right, but usually we want to avoid using the quadratic formula. It's a little complicated. If we can, factor it. If not, though, then you have that option. All right, so let's take a look at this first one. So this first one, this is x squared minus 9. What you should notice is, you take a little moment to think about it, this is a difference of squares. So both those numbers are squares. So you can write this as just x plus 9, x minus 9. So we factored it. And so then once we've got it factored, oh, here, let's just go back and fix that big error that I just made. You have to take the square root of those numbers. So that was a bad mistake. X plus 3, x minus 3. And so to find the x-intercepts, you just flip the sign of those. So x equals negative 3 for the first one, x equals positive 3 for the second one. And you have your two intercepts. All right, let's look at the second one. So this is a little more complicated trinomial because you have your factor in front. What I don't like is the negative sign. Negative signs are never nice. But we'll see how this goes. So to find this out, what two numbers multiply to, first of all, you have to bring together negative 3 and negative 8. So those two together make positive 24. And then you also have a positive 10 in the middle. So what two numbers multiply to give you 24 and add to give you 10? So there's a number of different factors of 24. You could do 12 and 2, 8 and 3, 6 and 4. So just spend a moment. And what you will find out is that positive 6 and positive 4 give you the answer. So we can break down the middle term into positive 6 and positive 4. Just leave the rest as is. And now factor by grouping. So is there something you can factor, common factor in the first two terms? Sure, why not? Let's common factor out a negative 3. I'm just taking out the negative because I don't like the negative. So negative 3x, and what you'll be left with is, now you'll be left with a positive in front, but then just be careful for the second part, you'll get a negative there because negative 3x times negative 2 will give you back positive 6. All right, so now let's look at the second part. Is there something that we can factor out of the second part here? So here, I'll just color code them. So you have your second part there, your first part here. It was not that greatly drawn, but hopefully you can see that you can factor out a 4 of the second part. And so when you factor that out, you get x minus 2 left. And this is exactly why we do it like this, because you can see now x minus 2 and x minus 2 are the same. So essentially what you can do then is just factor by common factor again. So taking out the x minus 2 and what's left, you have a minus 3x and a 4. So you get x minus 2, and I'm just going to write this as 4 minus 3x. You could write it as negative 3x plus 4, but just for neatness. Just looks nicer that way. All right, why did we do that? So why do we factor it like this? Because now you can get your roots. So x equals 2 here. To get this one, you can't just flip the sign like we did with all the other ones because we have a number in front of the x. So you actually have to solve for minus 3x equal to 0. And when you solve that out, what you should get is, you should be able to get a negative 4 over 3. Because we move the 4 over. Oh, sorry. So it's not going to be negative 4 over 3. It's going to be positive 4 over 3. Because you're dividing by a negative number. All right, so there is your solution to that one. All right, so now let's look at this next part. So this next one, trying to factor it, what multiplies to 18 adds to 8. You can think of a whole bunch of things, like maybe 9 and 2 doesn't work, 18 and 1 doesn't work, 3 and 6 doesn't work. Nothing works, sadly. So you have to use the quadratic formula. So negative b will be just, sorry about that, will just be 8 plus or minus, and then just be careful under the square root. So you're doing 8 squared minus 4. A is just 1, so you don't have to include that, times negative 18. So don't forget about the negative. That makes a big difference over 2, because A is just 1 again. And so what you will get is 8 plus or minus, so go through yourself and try it out, but you should get something like 11.6 in the square root once you've square rooted it over 2. And then you can see what your two answers are. So you should get x equals 9.83 or x equals negative 1.8. All right, let's go on to D. So for D, first of all, always check if you can factor something first. And the easiest way to factor is, of course, common factoring. So is there something in common with the terms that we have? There is. So there's an x in both of them. So just common factor that out. And you're just left with 6 minus x this time. And now we're basically done. So you have, based off of that, x equals 0, or if you look at the second part, what does that lead to? So 6 minus x equal to 0, if we were to set that, equal to 0, you would get x is equal to 6. And there you have your two intercepts. All right, so next we move on to negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 5. You could try again common factoring, nothing will common factor. Try complex trinomial, so what multiplies to negative 10 and adds to 2. Doesn't quite work out so nicely, actually. So unfortunately, again, that means quadratic formula. So what's your b value? It's 2, so it'll be negative 2. Then inside you have b squared, so you have 2 squared minus 4 times your a value, which is negative 2, times your c value, which is 5. All of that is over 2 times a, which is 2 times 2 in this case. When you simplify that, you should get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 44 all over 4. And then just go through and calculate that out. So you should get something like negative 2 when you, let's do the positive one first. So plus root 44 divided by 4 should give you 1.16, or if you do the other one, so negative 2 minus root 44. In that case, what you're going to get is negative 2.15, or 16 if you're rounding properly. Sorry, I just have an inkling that I might have made a calculation error for that first part. So I just want to check, but no, it looks all right. Okay, so there you have it. That is your solution. All right, and then for f, go through, try to factor it. If you try it out, what multiplies to like 7 adds to negative 3, try all you want, and you're not going to find anything. So again, we're stuck doing the quadratic formula. So our b value is negative 3, so it'll be negative 3, which is just 3, plus or minus 3 squared. I mean, you could write negative 3 there, but then brackets, but 3 and negative 3 squared give you the same answer, so it won't make a difference. Sorry, I just wrote plus or minus there, and that is definitely incorrect. So it's just minus 4 times our a value, which is just negative 1, times our c value, which is negative 7. Okay, that's all over 2 times negative 1. Sorry, it's a little bit of a mess, but what you should get when you simplify things, you'll get 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 19 is the key, over negative 2. Okay, and what does that lead us to? Well, what you should see is you have a negative under that square root sign, so can't square root it. And if you can't take the square root, you can't actually find it. It means basically that you have no roots or x-intercepts. And that is just a quick look at those 4 or 6 examples.